My name is Mara Ellison, 23 years old. Christmas dinner was almost over when my father set down his fork, looked at me like I was a math problem he'd grown tired of solving, and said, "You are a burden, and you can't live with us anymore." For a heartbeat, I thought I misheard him. My mother let out a quick, nervous laugh, the kind that begs the moment to turn into a joke, but he didn't blink. He sat there waiting for me to break. The room stilled around the sentence, like the house held its breath. Across the table, Lily froze with her fork midair, a 16-year-old statue with wide eyes and cranberry sauce trembling. I swallowed, set my fork down. "What?" "You heard me," Dad said. "You've overstayed your welcome. You need to move out." I stared, trying to reconcile the word burden with the light bill I'd paid 3 days ago, with the grocery list I'd stretched into meals, with the internet account in my name because no one else could get approved. I had stayed because they couldn't float without me. Dad hadn't worked in years. Mom's part-time hours kept the pantry thin. I was the reason the lights came on, the reason the Wi-Fi hummed, the reason there was anything on this table besides cheap ham and obligation. But in his mouth, I was excess weight, disposable. "Maybe we should talk about this later," Mom murmured, eyes skittering everywhere but mine. Dad's voice sharpened. "This is my house. I make the rules. She's done here." Lily placed her fork down, careful, as if sudden movement might trigger something worse. She looked from them to me like she'd woken in a stranger's dream. If they could throw me out this casually, what did that mean for her? I felt a strange calm slide into place. I wasn't going to plead for a chair at a table I'd been paying for. If they wanted the fantasy of independence, they could have the reality. I leaned back. "All right." Dad straightened, victory blooming in his posture. Mom pushed a pea around her plate, not speaking. Maybe shock, maybe relief, maybe just the habit of not making things worse. I stood, took my plate to the sink. As I passed Lily, I gave her the smallest nod. It was the only person at that table I cared to reassure. She pressed her lips together and nodded back, chin high like she was swallowing an earthquake. I didn't slam doors or stage a scene. I simply went to my room and started packing. The house murmured downstairs. Mom's low, urgent whisper, Dad's stubborn rhythm. I caught scraps. "She's old enough. We can handle it. Should have moved out years ago." The lies you tell yourself sound truer when you say them in plural. An hour later, Lily knocked. I opened, and she slid inside, red-rimmed eyes glittering. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said, folding a sweater into the suitcase, "but I'm leaving tomorrow." "You pay for everything," she hissed. "They can't even afford food without you." "Not my problem anymore." She chewed her lip. "Where will you go?" "I'll figure it out." I had savings. Not a lot, but enough to land somewhere. A friend with a couch owed me a favor. The timing was awful, but I'd walked through worse with less. She inhaled, like bracing herself. "Can I?" She stopped. We both knew the boundary. She was still in high school. They'd chain the door if she tried. "They'll never let it happen," I said gently. Her gaze fell to the carpet. "Yeah." We packed in a quiet that wasn't peaceful. She lingered when there was nothing left to fold. Finally she sighed. "You're going to regret this." I smiled without humor. "I know." Before dawn, I carried bags down while the house slept on its myth. I put them in my trunk, took one last look at the place where my money had made their comfort possible, and felt nothing but relief. As the car idled at the curb, I opened my banking app and removed my name from everything. Electric, internet, water, and yes, the streaming accounts that fed their slow evenings. A dozen confirmations cascaded across the screen. Access revoked, autopay canceled, card removed. I put the car in drive and didn't look back. For a few days, I crashed on my friend Jake's couch, the cushions too thin, his dog Max staring at me like a court bailiff, his roommate asking, not unkindly, how long I'd be making the place festive. None of it mattered. Freedom has a way of making inconveniences feel like upgrades. Noah, my boyfriend, offered his place, but his lease was a tangle of no additional occupants, and his roommate worked nights. "I can bring you food. Change locks at your new place when you get it. I'll do whatever you need," he said over FaceTime, soft-voiced and steady. It shouldn't have meant as much as it did. It did. 3 days after I left, my phone started to hum like a trapped insect. 7 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad. Shocking, because he never dialed unless it benefited him. A cluster of texts from Lily. I ignored them until she sent, "They're freaking out. The power's been cut off. A laugh slipped out. Of course they thought the bills would pay themselves. An hour later, Dad's losing it. He said you did something to the house. I pictured him stomping in the dark, Mom weeping about the Wi-Fi like it was a funeral, Lily clutching her phone as a lifeline. Then the phone rang again. I answered. Mom's voice crashed into my ear. Mara, we don't know what happened. The power is out, the internet is down, the water bill. You didn't pay, I said calmly. Silence. Then smaller. You paid for these? I almost laughed. Who did you think was paying? Your father said. She cut herself off. Pride disguised as competence had always been his most marketable lie. Not my problem anymore. Mara, please, we didn't mean... I hung up. I made tea in Jake's kitchen, the cheap kettle screeching like the house had an opinion. The dog stared, hopeful for disaster. I texted Lily, stay safe. If he gets scary, lock your door and call me. A reply bubbled. I'm okay. Mom's crying. He's pretending he's in control. Then, he keeps saying you'll come crawling back once you realize you need family. I didn't bother responding. I needed electricity in my name and a lease with my signature. I needed silence that wasn't filled by other people's panic. Noah called that night. How are you holding up? Good. It surprised me how true it sounded. He exhaled. I know you hate this question, but are you safe? Yes. Good. I can't get out of this shift, but I'll come over after. You don't have to talk. I'll just be there. We stayed on the line without filling it. At some point, Max sighed and flopped his head onto my ankle like a sandbag. It grounded me more than I liked to admit. I fell asleep, picturing my old room turned into a dark square with a dead outlet, the house finally reflecting the truth it had hidden. Without me, it didn't function. Morning came wrapped in quiet. I made coffee. I wrote a list of apartments and circled 2 that didn't ask for blood as down payment. The day was already better than the last. Then my phone vibrated again. Lily's name, a wave of messages, and beneath them, a notification I didn't expect. Mom followed a new account. The profile photo was familiar in a way that made my stomach cool. Noah's ex, her glossy life, wrapped in captions about compassion. I clicked and saw a recent like on one of Mom's vague posts. No words, just a photo of a candle and the caption, Family First. I set the phone down. I wasn't going to let ghosts with ring lights narrate me back into servitude. But I took note. Storms don't only come through doors. Some seep through screens. By late afternoon, the calls dwindled to a mutter. I answered none of them. I checked off one apartment tour, highlighted another. I proofed my budget and moved on to a line item I'd never written before. What I owe myself. It was blank. It needed numbers. At dusk, the sky over Jake's building bruised toward purple. I stood at the window and watched the street lamps click awake one by one. Somewhere across town, my parents were rummaging for candles and the moral high ground. It wasn't my job to hand them either. I shut the blinds. The couch creaked beneath me. Freedom did not feel like trumpet music or fireworks or the dramatic speech I never gave in the dining room. It felt like choosing when to answer my phone. It felt like a password only I knew. It felt like breathing without counting who else needed the oxygen. And I knew, with the hard clarity of winter air, that the real storm hadn't broken yet. The first warning came not from a voice, but from a machine. Fraud alert. Suspicious login attempt. My bank app flashed red. I bolted upright on Jake's couch, the dog giving me a startled side-eye. 2 more alerts stacked in my inbox. Failed password resets. Failed logins. Someone was pounding at a door they didn't have the key to. My gut didn't need proof. But proof came anyway when I called Lily. She picked up in a whisper. I was just about to call you. Dad's losing his mind. He's been on the computer all morning. In the background, slamming doors, his voice rising like a storm surge. Mom crying, like she wanted it to sound like restraint. Old passwords, I said flatly. Lily exhaled like she'd been caught in the act. You know Mom kept them in that stupid notebook by the computer. He's digging through it. He thinks he can get in. I clenched my jaw. He's desperate. He's dangerous, she corrected, her voice low and trembling. He keeps saying you ruined us, that you did it on purpose. She broke off, voice catching. Mara, I think he wants to go after you. Her words sliced through my chest. What do you mean, go after me? I don't know. A door slammed on her end. But he's saying you won't get away with this. I breathed once, sharp. Lock your door. If he does something crazy, call me. I hung up and changed every password I had. Bank, email, streaming, even Amazon. I set up two-factor authentication with a new number. I called the bank, locked my account so tight even I had trouble getting back in. For a moment, I thought the fire was contained. I was wrong. That night, Jake and I were halfway through a game on his Xbox when fists thundered against the apartment door. 3, 4 hits, rattling the frame. Jake froze, controller dangling. "Are you expecting someone?" My stomach sank. I didn't need the peephole, but I looked anyway. Dad. Breathing hard, fists balled like he was warming up for another swing. "Who is it?" Jake called. "My dad," I whispered, stepping back. Another bang. "Mara, open the door!" Jake's eyes widened. "What the hell is going on?" "Don't," I mouthed. The banging came harder, a kick against wood. "I know you're in there. You think you can just walk away from this?" I grabbed my phone, dialed 911 with fingers steady only because they had to be. "My dad just showed up at my apartment. He's trying to kick in the door," I told the dispatcher, voice clipped, controlled. Behind me, Jake paced, muttering, "This is crazy. This is insane." On the other side of the door, Dad's voice cracked with rage. "Ungrateful little, you owe us. You owe me everything." "Officers are on their way," the dispatcher said. 2 minutes stretched into a lifetime, filled with pounding fists and Jake muttering prayers he claimed he didn't believe in. Then sirens. A sharp knock. "Police, open up!" I opened the door to flashing lights and uniforms moving like choreography. Dad was already outside, chest heaving, wrists being cuffed. His eyes met mine. No regret, no shame, only venom. "You did this," he growled as they led him away. I didn't reply, because the truth was simpler than any argument. He did this to himself. An hour later, Lily called. Her voice shook. "Mom's losing it. She's saying it's all your fault. She's already calling people, trying to get bail money." "With what?" I asked. Silence. We both knew there was no money left. No savings, no safety net, not even working utilities. I should have felt guilt. Instead, I felt a strange, guilty kind of calm. Relief that the lines were finally drawn where they'd always been hidden. Noah came by later, still in his work clothes, his face pale with fury he was trying to bury. He didn't ask questions. He just sat next to me on the couch, his hand covering mine, his silence steady. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "If he comes near you again, I'll get a restraining order myself." I leaned back against him, the adrenaline finally loosening its grip. "We'll do it together," I said. But as I closed my eyes, I knew the storm wasn't finished. Because men like my father don't back down with handcuffs. They circle, waiting for a weak spot. And my mother, always ready to play accomplice, would be their echo. Somewhere out there, I knew they were plotting their next move. The call came from Lily the next morning. Her voice was tight, like she'd been whispering in a closet. "Mom's selling your stuff." My stomach dropped. "What?" "She's in the garage right now, boxing it up. She told me she already pawned your laptop." I closed my eyes, breathe in, breathe out. "She admitted that to you?" "She bragged about it," Lily said bitterly. "Said you left it behind, so it's theirs now." I didn't argue with Lily. I dialed 911 instead. My voice was ice when I spoke to the operator. "Yes. I want to report stolen property. My mother admitted she pawned my laptop without my permission." When the officers arrived, I stood across from my mother in the living room, where years of my paychecks had kept the lights burning. Her arms were crossed, her chin lifted like defiance could erase evidence. "You called the cops on me?" she spat. "You stole from me," I said evenly. "It was sitting there. You don't live here anymore. That makes it ours." "It makes it theft," I replied, holding her gaze. Her face flickered, just for a second. Then the officers stepped in, asking for receipts. She floundered, eyes darting from me to Lily, back again. "I'm your mother," she hissed under her breath, like the words should have been a shield. "That doesn't make you my thief," I said. And then Lily spoke, voice shaking but clear. "She told him herself, right before he called you." The room cracked open. My mother's head snapped toward her youngest daughter, eyes full of betrayal. "You little—" "Ma'am," one officer cut her off, voice sharp. "Do you have a receipt from the pawn shop?" Silence. Her face crumpled. The handcuffs clicked a moment later. Neighbors peeked through blinds as she was led out, crying, shouting about being a struggling mother, about unfairness. But no one came to defend her, not this time. Lily stood beside me, arms folded tight across her chest, staring out the window as they put our mother in the cruiser. "Is this really happening?" she whispered. "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." My phone buzzed as the car pulled away. A new message, an unfamiliar number. You're going to regret this. I didn't need a signature. Dad was out. Bail money had come from somewhere, an old drinking buddy, a distant cousin, maybe someone fooled by their sob story. He was free, and he was furious. I showed Lily the text. Her face went pale. Mara, you need to leave. No, I said. They do. We moved quickly. The officers outside nodded when I asked if I could retrieve the rest of my belongings. As long as your sister consents, one said. Lily was already grabbing boxes. Let's make it fast, she urged. Upstairs, I gathered everything left. Clothes, journals, even old trinkets I once thought too sentimental to pack. They weren't treasures anymore. They were leverage waiting to be stolen. I filled the trunk of my car until the springs sagged. As I carried the last box out, Mom was in the driveway, wrists free now, shouting my name like it could reverse everything. I walked past her without flinching. She wailed, begged, accused. None of it mattered. Lily hovered by the car window, her face tight with fear and something like envy. I don't want to stay here, she said, voice breaking. I know, I whispered. 2 more years. Then you're free. Her eyes filled. Promise you'll answer if I call? Always. Headlights swept the street as another car pulled up. My stomach dropped when I recognized the outline of my father climbing out. His eyes locked on mine, fists clenched, like the night outside Jake's apartment. I rolled down the window just enough for my voice to carry. You come near me again, I'll file a restraining order. His mouth twisted. You think you're better than us? I met his stare, steady. I know I am. Then I shifted into reverse, the tires crunching over gravel, and drove into the night without looking back. That was the last time I saw them together under the same roof. I didn't answer their calls after that night, not the unfamiliar numbers, not the blocked IDs, not even the ones that came disguised as unknown at odd hours, always with silence on the line before the click. I blocked every number I knew and opened new accounts for everything that mattered. Banking, insurance, even the grocery delivery app. I moved into a small apartment across town. The first night I turned on a lamp and watched the bulb glow because of me. Paid for by me. No hidden debts, no borrowed names. The hum of the fridge sounded like independence. Lily texted in whispers for months. He's still not working. Mom's always crying. They blame you for everything. Sometimes she'd add, I wish I could leave now. I'd reply, 2 years. Keep your head down. Call me if it gets bad. Our thread became a lifeline neither of us said out loud. Meanwhile, my parents spiraled. The house slipped into arrears, and within a year, the bank took it. They moved through rentals like ghosts, looking for a place that wouldn't spit them out. I heard about it from Lily, then from distant cousins who sent me screenshots of Mom's Facebook rants, long posts about ungrateful children, prayers for strength, vague pleas for money. Once Noah showed me another screenshot. Marissa, his ex, had commented under one of Mom's posts, "Family is forever. Blood always wins." The words stung, but only for a second. Noah saw my face and said, "She doesn't get a vote. Not in your life, not in mine." And he blocked her, right there in front of me. 2 years passed in quiet rebuilding. I took extra shifts, saved, bought a reliable car. I learned how silence feels when it isn't punishment but choice. Then, on Lily's 18th birthday, my phone lit up with a photo of her outside the old house, suitcase at her feet, smile wide and real. "I'm free," she texted. I drove 3 hours to pick her up. She climbed into my car, dropped her bag in the back, and for the first time in years, she exhaled like her lungs belonged to her. We never went back. The last I heard, Mom and Dad were renting a crumbling apartment in a part of town where streetlights flicker out and don't get replaced. They sent letters, accusations wrapped in nostalgia, pleas dressed as prayers. I didn't open most of them. The few I skimmed all ended the same way. Come home. But home wasn't theirs anymore. It never really was. I chose peace instead of performance, distance instead of drama. And every morning I wake up without their weight on my shoulders. I know I made the only choice that mattered.